Gridiron Grinder! Hut hut hike!
All right, James, how's it going?
It's going good. How's it going with you?
Good. We're back again. Another Gridiron Grinder. So what are we talking about tonight?
The AFC and NFC South projections.
Yeah, going through, taking a look at our projections for each team, and also if we have any award winners on those teams, right? Rookie of the Year, MVP, that kind of thing. It's probably good to point out, too, this is basically the first of a four-part series where we're going to look at all of the different divisions. And so we'll look at the South this week, and then we'll rotate. We'll look at probably, the East or West next week and vice versa, and we'll finish it off with the North. But, over these next 4 weeks here, basically we're looking at the whole league, A to Z. What do we think is going to happen? Who do we think is going to win some awards? And who do we think is going to go all the way to the Super Bowl? Yep.
Yep.
All right. So, basically, before we dig into each division and team, it's worth pointing out that I think, like for me personally, and I'm sure you probably feel the same, we've done a certain amount of research. We've put some models together. We've come up with some predictions. And as of today, we feel pretty good about them. But all the team activities are just getting kicked off. And so there's a lot of stuff that's finally hitting the news about what's going on with certain players and coaches and whatnot. And then a lot of teams actually are still sitting on a lot of salary cap space, maybe waiting to make some last minute moves here, just kind of holding on to see what happened with the whole COVID-19 thing. And so even though we're running with what we got for the next couple of weeks, these things are obviously subject to change. And then once the season starts, people get hurt, trades happen, whatever else happens. And, so we'll probably have to make some updates as we go. But for now, I feel pretty good about mine. I'm sure you feel pretty good about yours.
I feel great about mine.
All right. Well, do you want to, I guess, maybe tell me a little bit about your methodology on how you put together some of your predictions?
So basically, what I did was I looked at their schedule. I looked at who they lost, key players they lost from the previous year, what they've added, and to see if they were going to improve or get worse or be about the same from the previous year. I also took a look at other changes, like especially within the division, like changes to other teams in the division. If a team got better in the division, then obviously that might downgrade the projection for the other teams in the division.
Gotcha. Yeah, hey, that makes sense. You're covering all the bases, I think. And from my end here, what I did was probably a little bit of overkill. And I know I was explaining some of it to you over the weekend. But basically, I tried to put everything into a model. I guess you could say it's really more of a tool that I think I could use over and over again as the season goes on, as things change. But yeah, probably a little bit of overkill. Basically, I went through and I found a source that I like that basically rates every player individually. And I went in by team and I scored them offensively and defensively based on the players they have on their squad. And so it already kind of took into account all the transactions, players they brought in, they traded for, drafted, whatever the case may be. And I tweaked some of the ratings a little bit. Sometimes I disagreed with the source I was using, but ultimately it gave me a couple different tier levels on each team. I had elite players, I had good players, average players, and then basically subpar players. And that was like the basis of how I put together a score. And then I layered in on top of that score factors like coaching influence, any kind of like a surprise factor. Maybe you got a new coach or a whole bunch of new players, and so you're not sure what to expect. And then I even added in stuff like how I think that team will play at home versus away. And so not so much last year, but in previous seasons, we know like the Saints, for example, have historically played poorly on the road. And so I thought that was a good factor to put in. And then basically I pumped it into the schedule for the year, and it gave me my rankings for everyone right then and there. When I looked at it, I was actually pretty surprised that it kind of fit pretty closely with what I just had mentally in my head from reading and looking at all the different teams. And so I thought, hey, that's pretty good. I'm going to stick with it, and we'll go from there. So fun stuff.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess, hey, do you want to, where do you want to start? AFC South?
Okay,
We'll
we
go
can start.
alphabetical, AFC and then NFC?
Okay, that sounds good.
Okay. So here, I'll just kick it off here. I'll give you my rankings top to bottom. I've got Tennessee at 9-7, making the playoffs. And then I have a three-way tie with the rest of the division. Indy, Houston, Jacksonville, all 7-9. And I know that, that might seem strange. Houston's coming off of a 10-6 season. I think just in general, when I looked at the schedule for this group, I think they have some tougher competition this year. And that's why the overall performance has dropped down. Jacksonville gets a little bit of a bump, but I'll get to them in a little bit. But that's my 50,000 foot just quick view of what I think is going to happen.
For me, I'm completely different than you. When I looked at it, I think Houston is going to win the division at 10-6 again this year, and then Indianapolis at 8-8, Tennessee at 7-9, and then Jacksonville at the bottom of the division with a whopping 3 wins this year.
Ooh, wow. Okay. Well, do you want to look into each of the teams individually and I guess talk out a little more about where we were different in our evaluation?
Yeah, you want to just do it in my order, or you want to do it in your order?
Well, hey, I'll defer to you. Let's go with you. You got Houston winning. How about we start there?
Okay. With Houston, when I look at it, yeah, they lost DeAndre Hopkins and Carlos Hyde, and they defensively they lost 3 players, but I think the addition of Brandon Cooks and Will Fuller being healthy will lighten the loss of Hopkins. I think David Johnson could have a similar season to what Carlos Hyde has done for Houston, which that's about 1,000 yards. Last year was Carlos Hyde's first year with 1,000 yards. The previous years he had like 800 or 900 yards, and so I think David Johnson can make up for losing Carlos Hyde. And it's just their quarterback, Deshaun Watson. He's basically in a lot of games. I think he would more or less just will them to win, despite having Bill O'Brien as a coach.
Yeah, to a lot of what you're saying, I agree with. I do believe Deshaun Watson is one of those just genuine difference makers in the league, and he can carry the team in a way that a lot of quarterbacks can't. The thing that I guess I looked at was just that, and I know a lot of people are commonly calling out the DeAndre Hopkins trade. And I don't think that on its own is what's going to be their demise here. I just think when you look at the team, you have a lot of key contributors now that are either high bust potential, like David Johnson, or they're injury prone, like Brandon Cooks, Will Fuller, and now even J.J. Watt at this point in his career. And, based on really that factor, I think that they kind of have to have the stars align a little bit for them to stay in the playoff hunt. I think that they're asking too much of Deshaun Watson at this point, and if a few things don't go right, I think they could go wildly off course. And so, maybe that's not the case. I know I've told you before, I do like Bill O'Brien. I'm probably one of the only guys out there that actually thinks he's a pretty legit good coach. But, some of the moves were suspect. I think that they addressed the holes. They definitely did. Brandon Cooks stays healthy. He's a burner. He can be a difference maker. David Johnson, he's a dual threat running back. He does have the potential. It's just been a nasty couple of years for him. And so, maybe something's there, maybe something's not. I don't know. Defensively, I do think they're on the downfall, and that's going to put more pressure on Watson. And so, that's just kind of where I differ. Now, I did look; they're still sitting on like $19 million in cap space. Maybe they got a move up their sleeve that they're waiting to use. But if I was Bill O'Brien, I'd be pushing to max that thing out, man, because he's been sitting on the hot seat. It seems like these last couple of years.
Yeah, and which your record of 8-8 makes sense in the aspect that as part of my research, I was reading that they're as a team, based on how they played last year, they outperformed what they should have been based on their stats.
Oh, I agree. Yeah, and I've got them at 7-9, but it's close.
Oh, 7-9. Yeah, because last year, according to what I was reading, according to their stats, they really should have been 8-8, not 10-6.
Gotcha, and that would make sense to me. It's one of those deals. Watson willed them to a couple wins, probably. All right, so what was your next team? It was Indy, right?
Yeah, it was Indy.
All right, so tell me a little bit about them.
So, Indy with Indy, they were 7-9 last year, which with Brissett and who got hurt, and then also Hilton was hurt for a few games last year. This year defensively, they added Buckner, which I think Buckner's
he's a beast.
Yeah. He's a beast. Phenomenal add defensively. But to replace Brissett, they have Phillip Rivers. And Phillip Rivers, basically, I liken his ability to turn the ball over like he forgets which team he plays for. He regularly has more than 20 interceptions a year. It's not just last year. Last year he had 20. The couple years ago he didn't, but he seems to have multiple 20 interception seasons a year. Plus last year he had 8 fumbles. I mean, he had close to Jameis Winston level turnovers last year. He's a slight upgrade at QB, I think, from Brissett. I think Brissett could have developed into being a better starting quarterback if he had more time, if he wasn't just thrown in there day before the season. Oh, you're starting now because our quarterback retired.
Yep.
And I think he could have developed into a better quarterback. I just don't see the addition of Phillip Rivers adding much offensively to the team. And that's why I gave them 8-8 this year. I think Buckner, the addition of Buckner, makes the defense better, which will possibly give them 1, maybe 2 additional wins this year.
I gotcha. Yeah, and so when I looked at Indy, I went back and forth on them quite a bit. And at the end of the day, I just kind of fell back onto my model, and I trusted the numbers and some of the analysis that I did. And coincidentally, I stuck them at 7-9, which is where they were last year. And I'm a big fan of Frank Reich. I think he's a great coach. I think it was tough the way Andrew Luck up and retired out of nowhere last year. That put him in a bad spot. And I think they did pretty good with the circumstances that they had. For this year, I think I'm comfortable with 7-9 for a lot of the reasons you're saying with Phillip Rivers. I think that if this was a team that focused on running the ball, which they should because they've got one of the best, if not the best, offensive lines, and a trio of good running backs now with Jonathan Taylor, Marlon Mack, and Nyheim Hines, they could run it and then have their defense just dominate. And their defense is moving into that category where they can carry this team. But I think Rivers is just one of those guys, you can't trust him. I think he's a risk of giving the game away because he doesn't protect the football. So if I see that maybe him and Frank Reich are on the same page and he does a better job managing it, I could see as the season goes on, I definitely tack on a few more wins for this team. But that's just kind of where I feel right now. And then also, I think there's a tremendous amount of pressure on this team, just kind of looking at some of the players in their life cycle. It looks like I've read and heard a few things about T.Y. Hilton possibly being gone after this year. And I don't know how much of that is, some of the injury history or some salary requirements, whatever it might be. But they're coming up on having to pay Darius Leonard some big money and Quentin Nelson some big money. And so I think that, and then obviously Rivers is long in the tooth, so we know that his clock's ticking. And maybe Jacob Eason is the future for them. I know they drafted him later on in the draft, but I think that puts a lot of pressure on this team for this year. And I don't know. I just think when Rivers has got pressure on him, that's when he does his worst. So I'll stick with 7-9 for now, and hey, we'll see how it shakes out.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk Tennessee. You had them next.
Yeah, Tennessee. So Tennessee is basically returning almost their entire team from last year.
Yeah.
So, but the problem I have with Tennessee is Tannehill. Tannehill last year had a career year in terms of touchdowns to interception ratio. I don't know. I don't think that is necessarily going to be sustainable for him. I think he's more of what he's proven in the past versus what he did last year. And because of that, that's why I took down their record. And it's 2 games, but I just flipped it. But it just seems to me that Tannehill was the reason why they won 9 games last year.
And that won't be repeatable, is what you're thinking.
I don't think it's a repeatable scenario for them. And it's just how I see it with Tennessee.
Okay. Well, when I looked at Tennessee, I had actually dug deep into Tannehill's performance, and I thought even if he regresses a significant amount, I still think this team can get to 9-7 again, which is where I got them pegged. And, as I mentioned, with I think some of these other teams slipping, that could be enough for them to win the division and get to the playoffs again. But I think, free agency-wise, trade-wise, for the most part, I think they did what they had to do in terms of re-signing Tannehill coming off a career year, re-signing Derrick Henry coming off a career year. If they let either one of those guys walk, it could have been disastrous for them. And I think that they showed they're both team players and they're hardworking guys that it was worth investing in them and seeing what happens, giving them another shot to repeat it. I was a little bit nervous about them letting Jack Conklin go. I know that the year before he was injured and, there was some talk about maybe they didn't want to pay him big money with that risk hanging out there. And then trading Jarrell Casey, I thought was suspect. But I have read that a number of their moves were done to retain the lesser known but integral teammates that they have. Like Michael Pruitt is a tight end blocker, Kamale Correa, Dennis Kelly, just to name a few. Guys that aren't really heralded players, but they help make the team come together. And I liked that. I think that bodes well for them with continuity, which is going to carry over into this year. And I think continuity is huge with this whole COVID-19 thing going on. Later on we'll get down to the NFC South and we'll talk about Carolina a little bit. I think teams like that are at a big disadvantage this year. If you've got a lot of change, you just don't have the time to get acclimated and you don't have the regular off season to get everybody on the same page and get them gelling. But with Tennessee, they do still have almost $20 million in cap space, and there's been a lot of speculation that they're going to go after a guy like Jadeveon Clowney. I think that would be huge for this defense, and that could be the kind of thing that if they jump on it, whether it's Clowney or somebody else, that could be the thing that puts them over the top here in the division. And so, I don't know. I like the consistency. I love freaking Mike Vrabel. I think he way out coached this team last year. And I don't know. That's my pick. So,
yeah. One thing you also have to remember is without fail, there's a team that played on Championship Sunday that doesn't make the playoffs the following year.
Oh, for sure.
without fail. Every season that happens. And I think this year it's Tennessee because I think Tennessee outkicked their talent last year.
I got you. And that's a possibility. Yeah, I think that, yeah, there's risk. And when I looked at some of these teams, like the AFC South in particular, I thought that for the most part, each team had solid building blocks, some solid pieces on offense, some solid pieces on defense. But compared to some of the other divisions across the league, I thought this was one that was weaker in terms of overall depth of talent. And I think that that could be a factor for any one of these teams, and and it's like you look at, like I just said, Tennessee letting Jack Conklin go. Well, they used their first round pick to bring in a lineman. That's great, but that's a rookie now, not a seasoned player, and it would be better to have had Conklin and then maybe get a rookie developing behind him. And I'm sure that they've got stuff like that going on all the time. But I just think that the depth for all of these teams in this division is a little bit suspect.
Yeah, I can agree there on the depth.
Gotcha. All right, so let's see who's left. Jacksonville. Let me hear it.
First with Jacksonville, I think they're actively trying to lose this year.
You could make that case. Yeah.
I think that I mean, if you look at their defense, they lost two starters. They lost Calais Campbell.
Oh, that was huge. Yeah.
Who's the leader of defense, and I think he's still one of the best ends in the league.
Yep.
I mean, he's getting older, but I mean, he was the leader. Then you have AJ Bouye.
Yep.
However you pronounce it. He was fourth on the team in tackles last year. And he had like some ridiculous number of tackles, like 150 tackles last year. You have Yannick Ngakoue, who wants a trade, doesn't want to trade.
It's always a mess with that guy. Yeah.
I can't keep up what's going on with him, but the problem is that there's another person they're going to lose on that defense. Plus, last year in the middle of the season, they traded Ramsey away.
Mm-hmm.
Now, offensively, I'm just not sold on Minshew being a starter in the league.
Okay.
I'm also not sold that Jacksonville thinks he's a starter in the league.
Yeah.
And there's rumors that they've been actively trying to trade Fournette that I've been seeing. And I just think this team it's going to go through its rebuild, eventually be the London Jaguars and have all fresh new players. Not really fresh new players, but they'll get their starting quarterback in the draft if he's available. I don't know.
Yeah, the tank for Trevor talk.
Yeah, but at 3-10, I don't even have them as the worst team in the NFL.
Okay.
Or 3-13 with 3 wins. We'll down the line when we get to some of the other teams.
Mm-hmm.
We'll not on today, but one of the next ones, we'll get into why I think that there's a team that might be lucky to win one game this year.
Gotcha. Well, so when I look at Jacksonville, I agree with you 100%. When you look from the outside looking in, this appears to be a team that is trying to implode. They just want to destroy everything they got and rebuild, but it's like they're just not like fully doing it, which is the weirdest thing. It's like, okay, there's the talk of trading Fournette. Well, come on, if you're really that upset, just move the guy. You move freaking Calais Campbell, a cornerstone player on your team. I'm sure you can find some crap deal to get rid of Fournette if you really don't want him that much. For me, though, I'm in the opposite camp with Minshew. I watched a lot of his tape last year, and I was blown away by the poise for a rookie quarterback in the NFL. And I think his numbers across the league were, I would say, probably average. He had a decent amount of running yards for a rookie, for a quarterback for that matter. But I think that for what he put up, it was extremely good that he was a rookie putting up those numbers. And if he can keep improving off of that, I think he is a franchise quarterback. And, it's probably me just being a little bit giddy, like, oh my God, this guy was amazing. But he put up, like I talked to you earlier in our deal here, fantasy-wise. He put up similar fantasy stats as Kyler Murray, and Murray's getting all the hype this year. Yeah, I get it. Two totally different teams, two totally different circumstances. But I think that you can make the case that Minshew, he showed a spark. And, but yeah, if this team wasn't trying to knock itself down, maybe there would be more hope. And so, kind of like how I could see the upside that you had with Houston, I can see the downside that you have here with Jacksonville. I stuck with my model. I agree, like you're talking about with the trades, AJ Bouye, however you say it, and Jalen Ramsey, that's going to hurt them. I know they went out, they drafted CJ Henderson, and then, they got Kalavon Chason at defensive end. I know I'm butchering his name too, but it's the same thing. You now have rookies that have to make an instant impact. It'd be better to have them work their way in before you get rid of those starters. And by the team not properly transitioning, it sets them up to potentially be a bottom of the barrel team. And I have heard the talk with this team about the whole tank for Trevor stuff. And it blows my mind that teams would even think that way, especially when you saw what Minshew could do. But hey, we'll see what happens. Minshew does have some weapons. He's got a good trio of wide receivers. And they brought in Jay Gruden, who's been good with quarterbacks. And so, I don't know. I'm hopeful. Maybe I'm wrong. We'll find out. That's why we got to wait and see how it plays out. But, and I didn't really think it was like an earth-shattering improvement. They went from 6-10 to 7-9 in my model. It's a little bit of improvement. But I agree. It could fall back based on all the moves they made. All right, so let's see. Any final thoughts on the AFC South?
I think that's all I had on the AFC South.
Okay. Well, let's hit the NFC South then. Do you want to fire off your rankings, your record predictions, and then I'll give you mine?
Yeah. Okay. So at the bottom of the NFC South, I have Carolina at 6-10. Then I have Atlanta at 7-9. Then New Orleans at 10-6.
Okay.
And at the top, and I struggled. Tampa, I really, really struggled with them. And when I looked into their schedule and stuff, I think they can go 13-3 this year.
Nice. Okay, so do you have New Orleans and Tampa Bay both making the playoffs then? I mean, obviously you got Tampa Bay as a division winner, but then New Orleans getting a wild card spot?
New Orleans as the first wild card, yeah. And that's the other thing that was about the AFC South. I have Indianapolis making the playoffs at 8-8 in the AFC.
Which can happen now that you've got the third wild card spot. It can definitely happen.
Well, in the AFC, I ultimately had a three-way tie for 6th.
Okay.
And had to look up the tiebreakers and to figure out.
Oh yeah. Who gets the edge?
Who gets the edge? But yeah, and Indianapolis ended up in the second wild card spot, not the 7 hole.
Not the new one. I got you.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So I ended up being slightly reversed at the top. Anyhow, I had New Orleans at 13-3, which is where they finished last year. Obviously making the playoffs. I got Tampa Bay at 10-6, also making the playoffs, getting one of the wild card spots. Then I had Atlanta at 6-10, and I've got Carolina at 4-12, which actually, based off of my projections, puts Carolina as the bottom team in the league, which I was kind of surprised about. But I did do a lot of digging, a lot of research, and without manipulating my model, I thought, hey, it looked good enough that I'm going to stick with it. So let's see. You had Tampa Bay at the top. Why don't we start by talking about them?
Okay, so the thing with Tampa Bay is last year at 7-9, their defense was middle of the league, but they had a quarterback that threw 30 interceptions
Oh yeah, put them in a bad spot.
and put that defense in the terrible spot. Brady doesn't turn the ball over like Winston does. They have offensively they're incredibly stacked. I mean they have Chris Godwin, they have Mike Evans, Gronk.
They've
Uh,
got three feasible tight ends: O.J. Howard, Cameron
OJ
Bray. Oh
Howard.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they're just completely stacked. I think their their offensive line is not as good as Brady had in New England, but I think it's on the better side of the offensive lines in the league. Um, almost the entire defense is coming back besides Nasib, but I just think that defense not being in the terrible positions they were in with Winston, and I actually looked it up. If you look at their points per game and their points allowed per game last year defensively, they actually had a slight edge on points per game scored on that. And I just think that I see them putting up huge numbers offensively, and Brady having not his MVP year of like 2 years ago, but a solid Brady year.
one heck of
Of
a comeback year for being
Yeah,
on a new team. Yeah.
yeah,
I got you. Yeah. So when I looked at Tampa Bay, this was a team where obviously we don't have to talk much about the offense. Everybody knows Brady came over. He lured Gronk out of retirement. They worked the trade to get him. They've got a lot of playmakers. My concern on offense is the offensive line. I'm not sure it's as good as you think it is, but it's that's just one man's opinion. And for Brady's sake, yeah, hey, we hope it's good enough, or otherwise it's going to be a problem for him. Um, and if they can keep him clean, I could see him putting up some monster stats, just like you're alluding to. Um, I'm not expecting them to make some kind of a crazy Super Bowl run. I think they're going to be really good. I just think there's risk with that offensive line, and so that's kind of where they got discounted in my model. But I do really like the defense, and I think the game script, like you have mentioned, is a big thing. This is a defense that, as the year went on last year, they started looking really good. And they started looking really good, being put in bad spots week after week. And they got a lot of people, man. They still got Sue. They got Pierre Paul, Shaq Barrett, Devin White, Levante David. And then even at cornerback, they got a couple second-round picks. Sean Murphy-Bunting and Carlton Davis are on the rise. And I love that they went out. They got Antoine Winfield Jr. in the draft. Maybe he needs a little bit of time to get up to speed before he's a difference maker. But, I think he's got a bright future in the league. And, but here was one of the things that stood out for me with Tampa Bay. They do have a lot of great players starting on both sides of the ball. When I dug into their depth, I did think it was a little bit suspect. And so I think that that's probably part of why my model, they fell below New Orleans. And when we get to New Orleans, I'll tell you basically they had, in my opinion, the most depth of any team in the league. And it was maybe close with Baltimore, but like third place depth-wise was like not even close to either of those two teams.
yeah.
Well, I guess, hey, on that note, why don't we talk about let's talk about New Orleans.
Okay, so the thing with New Orleans that I looked at is if you take last year with New Orleans and you look at their stats, they really played like a 10-6 team,
Mm-hmm.
not a 13-3 team. They have Tom Brady coming into the division. Last year they won both games against Tampa Bay. This year they have to play Tom Brady, and I think they're going to go 1-1. I can't say that. I think basically what's going to happen is New Orleans is going to win the opening night game, and then when they go down to Tampa, Tampa Bay is going to win.
Yeah, they get them back. Yeah.
Plus they have to play Kansas City, which means they have to play Mahomes. So right there, just looking at their schedule, that's two additional losses.
Mm-hmm.
I think my third loss. Let me take a look. I think I had Carolina surprising them in one game.
Which
Yeah,
could happen. I think in my model, I actually put in some surprise factor for Carolina. You get a new coach, a lot of new players. It's hard to know what to expect, and sometimes they can come and they can bite you in the ass, and so it could happen. You never know.
Yeah. And then you look at Breeze. Breeze is getting older. If you
Yeah.
look at 2018, towards the end of the year, he started to tail off. Last year, towards the end of the year, he didn't tail off, but I think that was also because he was hurt for 5 games.
Yeah, he missed some time. Yeah.
And in those 5 games that he missed, somehow New Orleans was able to go 5-0,
Mm-hmm.
which that helped their record immensely last year. I just think that last year's record of 13-3 is not sustainable with the tougher scheduling this year. That's why I downgraded them a couple losses.
I gotcha. Well, I just had one thing I remembered going back to Tampa Bay for a minute, and I know that we were looking at different kinds of awards that we were expecting certain teams and players and coaches to get. I actually had Bruce Arians winning Coach of the Year. And it might sound strange because I got New Orleans in my model beating them record-wise, but basically the bar is already set so high with New Orleans having been 13-3 last year, and I think with the Bucks going from 7-9 to 10-6 in my model, I think that's enough that Bruce Arians, he's a popular guy. There's enough hype there that he could end up winning that award if they get in the playoffs this year. I think it's just a feel-good story. Everybody wants it to happen. They want Brady to have success. Bruce Arians, he'll get some of the credit. It'll be, it'll be what it is. But going on to New Orleans. So when I looked at New Orleans, like I said, my model had them with the most talent, top to bottom, anywhere on the league, and Baltimore was like nipping at their heels, and then third was like not even within an arm's reach. They were a ways away. I think Breeze is the wild card for this team. If he has anything at all left in the tank, I think they can go all the way. And I've actually got New Orleans winning the Super Bowl. I know, for a lot of the reasons you're saying, it's a stretch. But I think they've got talent on both sides of the ball. I think they have great depth on both sides of the ball. And it's really just a matter of, can they get out of this habit where they've been snake bitten in the playoffs? They've had a couple runs where, like last year, their depth was arguably just as good last year as it is going into this year. And they had an early playoff exit, and it's one of those things. Hey, is that going to follow them around just like Breeze had a hard time winning on the road for so many years? Maybe. I don't know. I'm just thinking that this is year they break the cycle and they get through. And I don't know. I guess I like the idea of Breeze finishing on a high note. He gets another ring and he can go out a winner, and then he can go hit the booth, and that's fine. I'd love to see him in the booth. But, just looking at his weapons, too, they brought in Emmanuel Sanders, arguably the best wide receiver, too, that he's had on this team. Jared Cook, he's a good tight end. Maybe not great, but he's good enough. You got Kamara, who should be back and healthy, and hopefully they figured out that you're going to complement him with Latavius Murray. You're not going to bury him with carries and touches and burn him out. And, I just think a lot of things, I think they have a lot of things working in their favor, and I think that they're one of the few teams that can afford an injury at almost any position and still survive. And, it sounds crazy. Breeze could go down, and they could still win just like they did last year with Bridgewater. Maybe not with Jameis Winston throwing, a ton of turnovers, but you hope Sean Payton can get to a guy like that and be like, hey, man, you still have a future in this league if you learn how to tighten things down a little bit. And if not, there's still Taysom Hill. I know he's a bit of a gadget guy, but in a pinch, he could probably make something happen with how good that defense is and the rest of the supporting cast. I don't know, man. I like the Saints a lot, and maybe I'm going a little bit crazy about it, but like I said, that's my Super Bowl pick for this year, as of today.
Well, we have same division, different teams this year.
Yeah.
For Super Bowl, because I think I had Tampa Bay.
Okay, so you got them not only going, you got them winning it.
Yeah.
Man, that'd be phenomenal for Brady.
I also had Tampa Bay having, and the one award I struggled with, and I really severely struggled with this award, and I spent hours on it, and the Offensive Player of the Year.
Yep.
I have Chris Godwin.
Oh, nice.
I have him like Brady. He'll find the open receiver. The defense won't be able to focus on one receiver with the talent they have there. Last year he had 1,300 yards and 9 TDs. I see Brady catching him underneath as Evans is stretching the field, and then Godwin's going to be coming underneath, and Brady's going to be hitting him. I see him having a Michael Thomas-esque year this year of 1,700 to 1,800 yards, double-digit TDs, and just taking that step forward. Because if you look at Godwin, each year he kind of takes a step forward and takes a step forward.
Mm-hmm.
And that was with Jameis Winston.
Oh yeah, and I'm glad that you mentioned that with him, because I can absolutely see that. I can see if he gets his receptions up, he could definitely be an Offensive Player of the Year like Michael Thomas was. And with Brady, I think he's going to be their go-to guy over Mike Evans. I think Mike Evans is the big possession receiver. We just honestly have not seen Brady with that kind of a guy very often in his career. And so is it a matter of it's just not a good fit for him, or they just never really got one that stuck? I don't know, but I think it bodes well for Godwin for sure.
Well, but if you look at it, the one example of Brady having that receiver was when he had Moss, and he threw 50-some TDs that year.
Oh yeah. But Moss wasn't a Mike Evans. He was more of a finesse receiver. God, the guy was just so dominant. But But yeah, I don't know. Moss was in a different. He's in a different category than almost every receiver.
Yeah, and that's the other thing with Godwin. If you look at his games last year, he missed 2 games and still had 1,300 yards receiving.
Yeah,
and that was on 86 receptions.
Okay. Yeah, I think for him to get Offensive Player of the Year, he's got to. He's definitely got to be over 100 receptions. But I think that's a possibility with Brady, because he's going to get a lot more shorter things that weren't there last year because they were just airing it out like crazy. And so that'll up his receptions. The yards are going to come. He's just going to be a focal point. And so, I'm excited to see how that plays out. That's actually pretty intriguing to me. Okay, so what's next? You had Atlanta at 7-9, I believe you were saying.
Yeah, when I look at Atlanta, first of all, I don't have faith in Quinn as a coach anymore. I think when he had Shanahan as his offensive coordinator, and then they went to the Super Bowl and they blew huge lead. But in this offseason, defensively they lost Trufant, Campbell, and Vic Beasley. They lost their tight end, Austin Hooper, and while defensively, I don't see the replacements that they have. Yeah, they had some injuries defensively last year. Last year, their offensive line was injured, and they gave up 50 sacks last year, and they were 30th in the league in rushing. Mm-hmm. I don't think Gurley improves the rushing game at all. I don't have faith in Gurley. I think he had one good season, and since then he hasn't done anything. And so, but I think with the offensive line being healthy in Atlanta, I don't think they'll give up as many sacks this year, which will overcome the deficiencies I see defensively for Atlanta and give them the same record this year.
Okay. Yeah, I think at that record, I mean, I have them one less. I got them going from 7-9 last year to 6-10 this year, and I think, like you're saying, this is the end of the road for Dan Quinn. When he came out and started with this team, I really liked this guy. I even going back to his time as the defensive coordinator for the Seahawks, I liked him. I think he's a really well-spoken guy. He's a really good leader, but something's just not clicking. This guy's just not figuring out how to get wins. And in the NFL, at some point you got to win or you got to go. And and like you look at last year, he probably should have been gone last year, but the players went to bat for him and they got him one more shot. I just don't see it happening again this year. In terms of the people they lost and the people they brought in, I think they did okay, to be honest. I think like when you look at Trufant, being released, they drafted the cornerback A.J. Terrell. It's one of these things where Trufant wasn't really winning them games anyhow. He was kind of a riskier cornerback. He had some flash plays, but he also had some really bad plays. Now you're replacing him with a rookie, which I think long term that was the right move to make. I think for this year it puts him in a tough spot because you got this abnormal off season to get him up to speed. That's going to hurt him. Running back, I agree. Devonta Freeman, he didn't do much. He did a lot a couple of years ago, but he fell off a cliff. Was that him? Was that the offensive line? I don't really know. But I think with Gurley, it's great. The upside's there. But there's also a ton of risk there too. And so I'm not sold on it. Looking at the defense again, Vic Beasley, I mean, that guy never really lived up to the hype in Atlanta. And it's a shame, and then he had his weird deal with not showing up on time for Tennessee this year. I don't know what was up with that, but, maybe COVID-19, I don't know, chalk it up to that. But they did go out, they signed Dante Fowler. I think that was a good replacement. But it's the same thing. You now have a new player coming in, trying to get acclimated. I think it's gonna work against them this year. They've got too many moving parts. And then with Austin Hooper, I think they backfilled him appropriately. I think Hayden Hurst has potential. Is he at the same level? I don't know. I mean, he was basically stuck in the depths behind Mark Andrews. And so, I think that there's some skill there and some tape there that you could say, hey, it's worth a shot. And so you can kind of say, hey, they moved all these pieces, but they brought other pieces in. And I think at the end of the day, this is it for Dan Quinn. I think 6-10 is as good as it gets for this team. Matt Ryan, great quarterback. Julio Jones, amazing wide receiver. Calvin Ridley, up-and-coming wide receiver. But the three of them are not going to carry this team to the playoffs. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah. And the thing with Hooper versus Hayden Hurst, they're not the same style tight end.
No. I didn't mean that. No.
But what I'm saying is that's where I see the issue is the production and what Hooper did for Atlanta. That's what I don't see Hayden Hurst doing.
I got you. See, I see Hurst as a bit of a wild card because a lot of the reports I've read is that he's got more speed than Austin Hooper had, and that could help him as a receiver. But it's a limited amount of data on him, and so we don't really know, is he going to block well? Is he going to be everything they need him to be? Is he really going to be a good receiver? It's just too many unknowns. And Hooper, he proved it, obviously. He went and got a huge deal with Cleveland, and so, good for him. I think it's tough to pay a tight end that much money when, I'm just looking at my stat here. Atlanta's only got $3.6 million in cap space, so they had to make the sacrifice. I get it. It just, it's tough. They're rolling the dice is what's happening. Okay, so last but not least, we got Carolina, right?
Yeah, Carolina.
All right, hit me, man. What's going on there?
So Carolina actually surprised me when I went through it and had them ultimately ended up with 6 wins.
Okay.
I I thought this year was going to be a step back, and I my preconceived notion on this was Carolina would come in with 3 or 4 wins. But because I mean, and that's because I mean they're returning 7 starters from last year. I think it's like 2 on offense and five, no, 2 on defense and 5 on offense, or 3 and 4. Some ridiculous amount of turnover. They're going to have a lot of rookie starting
Oh yeah.
this year. I really like Bridgewater as a QB. I think I know you don't like him. You you think he's worse than what they had, and
No, 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 no. All right, I want you to get through your whole thing, but with Bridgewater, I guess let me just chime in real quick. It's not that I don't like the guy. I thought that we saw some potential going back to his time in Minnesota. And he seemed like one of those hardworking, overperforming kind of players. The concern I have with him in not Kansas City, the concern I have with him in Carolina, no, hey, it's that they've got Matt Rule coming in as head coach. They brought in, Joe Brady to run the offense, and I just don't see Bridgewater being the kind of quarterback that's going to push the ball down the field like it looks like they're wanting to do. And it's the same with like DJ Moore. I think he was a up and coming player last year, and I know you're high on him this year. I just worry, can he continue on his trajectory if he's got Bridgewater throwing a bunch of little dink and dunk passes all season? And it might not work out that way. I'm just concerned that I've not seen Bridgewater dropping bombs like that could be the case. And I think that would put this team in a very bad position.
yeah, and defense. The thing that concerned me defensively, I mean, losing Kuechly was. I mean,
Oh
that's
yeah,
his retirement. That's huge.
yeah. He's a
He
Hall
was
of Famer. Yeah.
yeah but he was the heart and soul of that defense.
Yep.
And I think ultimately them winning 6 games this year is more of a testament to what I think Matt Rule and Joe Brady can do with the weapons they have, and having McCaffrey at running back is where I think they take that step forward.
I gotcha. Yeah, and so when I read up on Matt Rule, I looked at some of his time as a head coach in college, and his first seasons as head coach did not go well. And, I read a lot about how he's a very methodical builder, and he doesn't cut any corners. And that's the reason that his teams jump so dramatically from year one to year two. And I think that we're going to see a similar thing happen with Carolina. I think that this is going to be an ugly year. But like you're saying, I mean, they've churned their roster probably more than anybody else in the league. And it's hard to have that kind of change and have immediate success. And so I think, based on my projections, they're slipping a little bit from 5-11 to 4-12 this year. Some of that's just that McCaffrey's going to regress a little bit. Teams are going to focus on shutting him down. And if Bridgewater can't get the ball deep, I think that there's going to be an awful lot of defenders in the box, and that's going to slow down the offense. I think the defense is in trouble for a lot of the reasons that you were saying. And so I don't know. We'll see what happens. I like I said, I don't know a whole lot about Matt Rule. I know Joe Brady, man, he's getting a ton of hype from what he did with LSU. These are guys that I don't, just being honest, I watch NFL almost exclusively. I don't watch a ton of college football until the draft comes around, or until times like this where I'm trying to find out what's going on with this coach, what's going on with these players. And so we'll see what happens, man. We'll see what happens. One thing that I did think was interesting to note is that Carolina used all of their draft picks on defense. Mm-hmm. And I mean, you could say rightfully so. I get it, and I think they made good picks with Derek Brown in the first round, Gross Matos in round 2, Jeremy Chin in round 3. I think they made some good picks. But when that kind of thing happens, it makes me wonder, is Rule falling into a typical rookie coach trap of, hey, I'm great at offense. I'll make anybody work. Just go ahead, stack the defense. We'll figure out the offense, and it'll all come together. And I'm not saying that that's the case. It just, when this kind of thing happens, it makes me wonder what's going on. Because, as an offensive-minded coach, I think he should be focusing on having offense be the strength of this team. And I know they got a lot of pieces in free agency. They got Bridgewater, they got Robbie Anderson. That's cool, but I would just not neglect it. I would embrace it, and I would make that the focal point. But my opinion.
Yeah, and the thing with Carolina, like if you look at their schedule, they have some pretty crappy teams on their schedule this year.
Okay.
Too. I mean they play Washington.
Yeah.
They play the Bears. They have New Orleans. Tampa Bay, the week after a Sunday night game with Tampa Bay plays Sunday night against New Orleans at home. Their last game of the year is New Orleans, who probably will have their playoff positioning locked up based on who I have.
Some guys,
who I had them at 10-6, who I had them tied with, because in the NFC, I think 10-6 is going to be the lowest record, and I have a 3-way tie for at 10-6.
Okay.
And the NFC, and I think they'll be locked up because the two teams they're tied with, they play this year. New Orleans plays this year, and have New Orleans beaten both of them, so I see how Carolina's schedule lines up. I think they could get some wins in there that people would just think about it. Oh, they wouldn't. Carolina can't win that game, but I think they'll surprise them because of various aspects to it.
I gotcha. And you mentioned Washington. That's a team, and I know we're going to get to them later. But and I don't have my notes in front of me on Washington in terms of do they beat Carolina or not. But I do like Ron Rivera. I think he's going to bring some solid leadership to that team. This may not be the greatest year for them either. But I think that they've got a shot a year down the road and maybe even further. But we'll see. Rivera, it obviously didn't work out in Carolina. He's a retread, so you never know. I just, Riverboat Ron, I liked him, and, I don't know.
I call him Titanic Ron because he always makes huge mistakes and at the worst time.
The funny thing, all right, so I was watching a game, this was a couple years ago, and they were talking about the whole Riverboat Ron thing. And I know I'm going on a tangent here, but they were saying that it was basically the opposite, that when he got the name Riverboat Ron, if you actually went and looked at the chances he took, like the going for it on fourth down and things like that, he was actually below average compared to other coaches around the league. It's just that the couple of plays that did happen ended up being all over the news, and so he got the name. And then later on, they were kind of like, yeah, he really doesn't take as many chances as you think. But, I think he took appropriate, calculated chances. I think that fundamentally he was a pretty good coach. They had a lot of things going on in Carolina that were dysfunctional. And, I mean, hey, that's part of the reason why, Matt Rule's there now. So we'll see how it comes around.
Yeah. And one of the things with Carolina was actually where one of the players in Carolina, McCaffrey, is where it was part of the problem I was having with Offensive Player of the Year, because I can see McCaffrey dominating this offense this year.
Oh yeah,
when you dive into it and having a huge season rushing, receiving the ball, with having Bridgewater and everything that's going on there. But where I struggled was I don't see them winning that many games, and can the Offensive Player of the Year be on such a terrible team?
You know, I think it can be because I think if it was MVP, it'd be different. I think the MVP has definitely got to be on a playoff team. I think the offensive or defensive player of the year even they don't necessarily have to be on a playoff team as long as it's like, oh my God, he's a man amongst boys, just tearing it up. And I think McCaffrey should have won it last year. And I think Michael Thomas stole some of his thunder. And I don't know that you could have gone wrong with Michael Thomas. It was a phenomenal record-setting year. I just thought that what McCaffrey did was unbelievable as a runner and a receiver. And I don't know. I would have given him the edge, but I'm not balking that much about Thomas getting it. And I think for this year, I think it's going to be tough for McCaffrey now because the bar is set that much higher now, and I think that defenses are going to be that much more all over him this year. And he's got to learn a new offense. And I just think there's a lot of things going against him now that if he doesn't completely repeat stat-wise, it's not even an option because they're going to say, he lost a step or, he dropped back a little bit and that's going to hurt him. But, he's definitely, he's blown me away. I had no idea he was going to be this good in the NFL. I'm sure you've heard me talk before that when he came out of Stanford, man, I thought this is Reggie Bush 2.0, a guy that could tear it up in college, but, maybe didn't have all the pieces that he needed to make it in the NFL. And, man, I've been wrong. And I'm glad I'm wrong. I think it's great that, it's good to be wrong when a guy is succeeding. You would rather do that than the other way around. So,
But that's the other thing about it is I think he just ended up in the perfect situation that allowed him to succeed. Like if depending on where you end up, you could be like, for instance, Jalen Hurts in Philadelphia. Mm-hmm. Jalen Hurts could be a good quarterback in the league, but he's drafted to be a backup.
Yeah, he's going to need Carson Wentz to get hurt, and then he's going to have to come out and shine, and that's how he'll get a shot. And if it doesn't work out that way, he's on the path of maybe not career backup, but definitely backup for his first run, for his first contract.
And what's his name that was in Arizona 2 years ago? He just was in the wrong situation, the wrong offense. I was high on him coming out. Rosen?
Oh, Josh Rosen, yeah.
Josh Rosen, yeah. I was high on him coming out. I thought he was in that draft was best, second best, most NFL ready quarterback, but he ended up in Arizona with whoever the coach was, McCoy or something like that.
Oh, he got shell shocked. Yeah.
Yeah, and he just got beat up, and plus David Johnson decided to take his step back, and they weren't using David Johnson, and it was just the wrong situation. And then he goes to Miami, who was in love with Tua and was going to draft Tua no matter what.
Yeah, they weren't really banking on him being the guy. It was like, hey, if you come in and wow us, we're going to give you a shot. If you don't come in and wow us, we're just going to let Fitzpatrick run the ship, and we're going to go and draft a quarterback next year. And, with Rosen, I'll tell you this. When he was coming out of college, I thought he was the best passer of that group. The ball, man, it was just so crisp. The tight spiral, it was like pinpoint accurate. He was one of these guys that knew how to lead a receiver really well, which you honestly do not see that as much as you want to from college passers. It's a lot of times they're waiting until the guy breaks open and then they drop the bomb on him. Rosen was good at anticipating the guy getting open and leading him. And I thought, man, this guy has a shot. And then it was weird going into the draft. There was a lot of random comments about him having personality issues, and I kind of thought, oh man, I don't know what to think about this guy anymore. But it just didn't work out for him. And hey, maybe somewhere he gets a shot and gets with the right team and coach that he can get back on track. But it's tough now. It's tough because he's definitely off the radar.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, well, cool. Well, hey, man, I think we covered these divisions pretty well, and I like that we had a different opinion on a lot of things. I think that's part of this is just showing that there's no right answer, and a million things they're going to change between now and the Super Bowl. And I hope as the season goes on, every couple weeks we do sort of an update on where we're at, because our own internal projections are going to change based on what transpires as the season goes on. But yeah, next week we'll carry it forward. What are you thinking? You want to do East or West next week? I mean, you're a West Coast guy, man, so.
Yeah, I know. I just want to. Let's do West next week.
Okay, I'm all for it. I got my model. I just got to go and pick out my talking points now. And see, that's the thing for me. I'm like, I don't want to say like formulaic, but I like having a model to fall back on, because it's like all these things talking them out. It's like, well, what does that mean for the bottom line? Well, if I'm putting it into a model and I'm saying, well, the model pumps it out here, and so then it's just kind of like some of this stuff at least is validating, I guess, what I'm projecting. But hey, these models, a lot of people make them, and a lot of times they're wrong. So,
Yeah.
It's just my model, just one man's model. All right, cool. Well, hey, I had a lot of fun, like always. Good talking to you, and I'll hit you up in a little bit, man.
All right, sounds good.
Gridiron Grinder. Hut, hut, hike.